Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we discuss all things in the gaming industry. And today's episode is going to include a couple of different things because most of the news sites have been covering all of the Black Friday sales and like the best games to get out and all of these different awesome things that leaves a little to be desired when it comes to talking about the video gaming industry and its various things. And I suppose it can have a day, but I do have a couple of topics that I'd like to cover, so we're just gonna head right into that. Okay. So, the first thing that I would like to cover is Xbox. And Xbox is in the news because Phil Spencer said something late last week. And I wanted to bring that to the forefront because I didn't do another gaming news episode outside of the one covering Activision Blizzard news. And there wasn't a lot to go off of for some of the stuff for last week that covered anything with gaming news, and this one sort of slipped by my radar. So, the reason that I wanted to discuss this particular topic, Xbox head Phil Spencer calls for legal emulation of older games. Now, he has gone to say that he has voiced that older games should be preserved, adding that he hopes the gaming industry can work on legal emulation to promote this. Speaking to Axios, Spencer has said that the gaming industry should prioritize the preservation of older video games, highlighting that film, TV, and music industries already preserve older content. Spencer said, "There's positive reasons for gaming to want to follow." Spencer suggested that one way to enact video game preservation would be for industry leaders to offer legal emulation. My hope, and I think I have to present it that way as of now, is as an industry, we'd work on legal emulation that allowed modern hardware to run any, within reason, older executable, allowing someone to play any game. He goes on to say a few other things, but on Monday, November 15th, Xbox added over 70 new backwards compatible games to its library. This means that numerous games from the original Xbox console, as well as the Xbox 360, are once again available to play on Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One platforms. So this is actually kind of huge, as we know that a lot of people will make their purchasing decisions of consoles based on its ability to have backwards compatibility. And also, by allowing more games on the Xbox to be backwards compatible, it has allowed Xbox the ability to deliver that experience on the next gen consoles without having to worry about, is it compatible or not. They're allowing this so that people can still enjoy the games that they like to play. And in my opinion, Xbox is really putting their best foot forward in the gaming industry and allowing access to all of these different things that people really want. And I, for one, am all for this. This is actually extremely exciting, and I think that this is actually a very good thing for the gaming industry. But I'd love to know your thoughts on what you think about Xbox and like what they've been doing over the last couple of years, because they've really come out on top in my opinion. And though I'm a PC gamer first and foremost, I can definitely see the appeal of Xbox consoles because of things like this. So I'm curious to see what some of you think about the same thing. Let me know in Discord. Next up, we have DICE in the news, and it's an interesting timing considering a variety of different things. So let's dive into this and you'll see what I mean. DICE's head of design is leaving following the release of Battlefield 2042. Battlefield 2042 launched earlier this month, and now developer DICE's head of design is leaving the company. As reported by VGC, Fawzi Mesmar is leaving the studio as he had plans to do so after its latest title had shipped. It was an absolute pleasure to serve on the best design teams in the galaxy, wrote Mesmar in an email to staff. The incredible design work that you do continues to inspire me every day. Thank you for putting some faith in me. I hope I didn't disappoint. Mesmar said that he was given an opportunity to work at another company that he could not turn down, and that his new employer has been kind enough to wait so he could ship Battlefield 2042. It was super important to me to be here with the team as we achieved this historical milestone, he explained. That's very interesting. EA has confirmed that Mesmar's departure, telling VGC, Fawzi Mesmar is leaving DICE at the end of the week. We wish him the best in his future endeavors. Now, this is interesting because we're not told what company he's going to, so it might have to wait until there is a reveal of said information. Who knows where he went to? 2, this is interesting that EA just didn't seem to say more about the whole thing. I wonder if it has anything to do with the issues and whatnot that Battlefield 2042 is having, and that EA is having to deal with a lot of the fallout from that. It's just an interesting move that you're there, you see it to the end, and then you decide to leave. And while I'm definitely not for EA and their practices and anti-consumer everything, I feel like this is a very interesting time to make a move, and I'm very curious to know what company he went off to. And if you guys have heard any rumors about that, I would love to know theories as to where he might end up going and what his future projects are going to be within the gaming industry, because like this is supposed to be like your baby. You've been part of the company since 2019, so admittedly you've been part of DICE for some of the hardest years because of the pandemic and the restrictions having to do with everything that brought. But the fact that through all of that you're going to move forward into a new company, which is admirable, certainly, but it's just a very interesting time to decide this. So I'm very curious to see where this goes from this point, where he ends up going and what IP he ends up working on. But we'll just have to wait and see on more information as this unfolds. So the next thing that I would like to cover is Destiny 2. Now, as some of you may know, there is something called the This Week at Bungie, which releases every Thursday, and last week we had a very beefy TWAB with all kinds of changes across the board, and Bungie has made efforts to change a lot of things to really deliver that gameplay experience that they really want people to have, and they have done so mostly successfully in terms of the fact that they have developed an amazing story that has been built up over a long period of time. They have added a new subclass of stasis and given players a lot of really cool things to play and do and consider, and the fact that we're not just resting on our laurels anymore, that we are moving forward, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And of course, the better is that we are given more quality content, more interesting and exciting content, better gunplay uses, etc., so on and so forth. And then of course the negatives are some of the things that I've previously talked about, where they're separating dungeons out and that you need to have the deluxe version dungeon in order to gain access to those dungeons, that it's essentially its own payment scheme. They've also done various things like taken out a lot of content. In fact, they are removing the ability to play Forsaken or any of the DLC content, if you will, through the Xbox Games Pass and, you know, things like that, where if you didn't previously purchase those things, you no longer have access to those things from a certain date. You can go and check that out. And also removing other content just entirely from the game, not just from Game Pass because you've only paid for technically the base game, but the fact that you're taking out entire chunks of content and now there is little context for people to know what's going on. And the next thing on the chopping block is the Tangled Shore, which I'm actually kind of sad about because I farmed the Tangled Shore all the goddamn time, and the fact that they're removing it from the game actually pisses me off. But what I want to talk about is not those specific things, it's other things like this. Destiny 2's 30th anniversary, which launches on December 7th, is going to need to be purchased on each platform you play on. So the most recent TWAB post detailing what's going on in Destiny 2 was much lighter than last week's, but included an important note. Unlike purchasing a season in Destiny 2, the Bungie 30th anniversary event will not transfer between platforms because it's considered a DLC. So if you purchase it on one platform like PlayStation 5, it'll only work for you on that platform. It will function as an expansion rather than the free seasonal events like the Dawning or the Festival of the Lost. Players will have to purchase the 30th anniversary pack for $25 in order to play most of the content it includes. It isn't included as part of the Season of the Lost. The only free part of this event is the new 6-player match-made activity called Dares of Eternity. And this bugs me for a lot of reasons, but the article continues. This is the first time Bungie has sold a smaller scale DLC for Destiny 2. Normally, its expansions are yearly affairs that include more content and come with a higher price tag. Season passes, on the other hand, allow players to access additional content, but are cheap and transferable between platforms. When Witchcreen launches, players will need to purchase dungeons for the first time as well. The standard edition of the expansion doesn't include the dungeons, but the deluxe edition will come with both dungeon set released in year 5. Now, I have a lot of problems with this, which I have detailed previously, and it stems around the fact that this is a 30th anniversary expansion pack. One would think that if you're celebrating yourself as a company, that you're going to do something fun and exciting and reward your players for being with you on the journey. Now, Destiny hasn't been out for 30 years, but Halo has been around for a really long time, and Halo is one of Bungie's biggest games as well, especially with the most recent Halo game launching that people seem to either love or hate depending on what side of the fence you sit on. And this just feels like a cash grab and a ridiculous play. Like the fact that, and I've talked about this, the fact that leading up to Witch Queen, if you want everything, if you want Galahorn, if you want all of the special things and access to the events and all of that, you're gonna have to pay for it. And while I'm not necessarily against that, this is an anniversary. Like, this is supposed to be a celebration, a fun event to celebrate the fact that your player base, your fans have been with you for such a long time, and you're gonna smack them in the face and not only say that, hey, by the way, you're gonna pay $25, which isn't necessarily the issue. The amount of money is not the issue. It's the fact that you have to pay for something that's celebratory, but also the fact that you're going to take everything away for people on console and force them to pay individually before that anniversary celebration comes out. They will not have access to all of this really cool stuff because they haven't paid for it. And if you were going to make that decision, I honestly feel like you should have done it so long ago, not right before the anniversary. And I just feel like this is extra scummy on the part of Bungie to do it this way. The fact that you're separating dungeons out, the fact that you're removing content, the fact that you're forcing people to pay for an entire worth of content all in one go, and then because of the situation, the fact that Witch Queen was pushed back, you're going to force us to also pay for the 30th anniversary right before Witch Queen launches in February, thereby milking us both before and after Christmas time, depending on when you get those things, without giving the option of paying for just a single season or anything like that to start out with. This just doesn't feel good. And the fact that we're getting closer to the time that this anniversary is supposed to come back, I am just so unenthused by it that I needed to talk about it and get your thoughts on it. Like, what do you think about Destiny 2 and what they're doing with the anniversary pack and what they're doing with the Witch Queen? Because I talked at length in a previous video, so it wasn't last week's, but the weeks before. Check that video out and tell me if you don't maybe agree with my sentiment of being really pissed off that it's going to cost an ass ton more money just to continue to play a game that I really enjoy playing, because I feel like they're pushing their people away in a lot of ways, and it's not going to turn out well for them in the end. So I'm just curious about your thoughts. Let me know once again in Discord, and we'll definitely have a dialogue about Destiny 2 and their recent decisions. Next up, I would like to talk about Ubisoft. Now, this was an article that I came across earlier today, and I practically balked at seeing it because it's kind of disgusting and frustrating, and I can't even begin to describe how grossly let down I am by reading this particular headline. Ubisoft recruiter allegedly claims workplace culture is not as bad as Blizzard. Think about that for a moment. Well, I guess, like, because we're not the same as this other company that's going through ass tons of lawsuits and stock dropping and learning that all the way to the top is misconduct and disparity in pay structure and just toxic culture, and Ubisoft's recruiter has the audacity to say, oh, well, I mean, we might be bad, but we're not as bad as Blizzard, so it's kind of okay. Fuck off. Like, seriously? But let's look at this. Although Ubisoft's gaming library is extensive and successful, it appears that things aren't looking as bright for the company's workers. Recently, one Ubisoft recruiter allegedly replied to criticism of the company by defensively stating that at least by defensively stating that at least the workplace culture wasn't as bad as Blizzard. Reportedly, Ubisoft had previously mishandled several reports of misconduct, leading the company to attempt to transform its HR processes to better catch this sort of issue. Apparently, the company is attempting to focus on addressing harassment before it occurs. Now, remember that a couple weeks back I had talked about in one of the Activision Blizzard videos that the only good thing to come out of the lawsuit so far with the Activision Blizzard situation is the fact that it's forcing all of the other AAA companies to run with their tails between their legs, scared, because the gaming industry is no longer going to stand for this kind of mistreatment of their staff, and they're not going to stand for being paid very crappily in comparison to their colleagues. And Ubisoft is not exactly a saint when it comes to AAA companies and allegations. They have had a massive amount of issues themselves, and I find it really funny and not funny, haha, that someone would have the audacity to say such a thing. So a Twitter user previously did lead design at Reflector recently shared an anecdote containing a conversation he allegedly had with a Ubisoft recruiter. According to Accent, the recruiter asked him what it would take to convince him to stay at Ubisoft for 5 or more years. Accent replied that Ubisoft would need better and safer workplaces, as well as a global culture change starting from the top, to which the recruiter allegedly replied, "At least it's not as bad as Blizzard." Like, that's okay. Like, just because we're not going through ass tons of lawsuits like Activision Blizzard is right now, doesn't mean that it makes it okay to treat your staff as shitty as any of them do. And again, we've talked about the fact that Ubisoft is not exactly a model citizen in the AAA industry. The fact that this recruiter would say something like that is ridiculous, and in my opinion should be immediately fired. If you're gonna talk about at least it's not as bad, if you don't want to start sowing those seeds, you're gonna need to start weeding them out before they take over your entire garden. So Jill Murray, who works on indie AAA games, joked that Ubisoft was exactly as bad as Blizzard. Considering that Blizzard has been wrapped up in a mess of lawsuits since this summer, that wouldn't be a good look for Ubisoft. And that just tells you absolutely everything that you need to know right there, that there are still people in the gaming industry that think that because they're not at the same level of Activision Blizzard, that they are basically okay and that it's acceptable to deal with these situations. A giant fat fuck you from me. But on to lighter news. Somewhat lighter news. We're going to talk about Uncharted 4 right now, as I came across an article on Game Rant earlier, which talks about the fact that multiplayer may be missing from PC and PS5 versions. So, as you may know, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End served as the final chapter in Nathan Drake's journey. Fans of the series were able to experience Nathan Drake in a different light as they saw him try and live out the life of a normal family man before regressing and delving back into a life of adventure that he had tried to let go of. It's an emotional single-player tale that already served as the major reason to purchase and experience this title for many PlayStation fans. However, The re-release of Uncharted 4 on the PC and PS5 has finally received an ESRB rating, which suggests that these versions of Uncharted 4 will not have the multiplayer mode that shipped with the original game. This conclusion is drawn from the fact that its ESRB rating clearly suggests that these re-releases won't have any social interactive elements whatsoever. That is kind of important because if you really enjoy the game, I agree that it is primarily a single player adventure game that is on the same level, if you will, as the Tomb Raider titles, where you have either a male lead or a female lead, but you're adventuring, you're archaeologists, there's all kinds of interesting storytelling going on there. And it is an incredibly good series from my understanding of what people have told me, because I haven't played them. But the fact that they allowed for multiplayer in the original version that people also really loved, the fact that that is not going to necessarily be ported to the PC version, well, it kind of sucks. It kind of doesn't at the same time. I feel like they may try and work on it and patch it in later or something like that. But at current standpoint, maybe because of the technology restrictions, they might not be able to do it at this time. So this might be a little bit early because this article was published today, but if some of you were looking for that multiplayer experience on PC, you're not going to get it with this particular version when it comes out. And so some people may be disappointed, but I see this as predominantly a single player story based adventure game, and therefore not having a multiplayer element doesn't bother me. Also, the fact that there are too many times where games become multiplayer and become toxic as heck. And because of that, it leads me to wonder why some people enjoy the multiplayer experience, especially if they like to play more of a solo style of game. And I feel like this would be strange. Again, I don't know the specifics as to the multiplayer version of this, but it's interesting nonetheless. And I'm just curious to see what you guys think. Will you miss the multiplayer experience in the Uncharted series, or is that something that's just not important to you and you much prefer to have the single player in all of its glory, but now on PC and PS5 where we didn't previously have it? The final thing I want to talk about is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, before you peace out of the video, while I did do a review on this game, and while it certainly has its issues that are continually being improved, one of the sales that have been going on also means that Cyberpunk 2077 was put on drastic sale, and you can now get it for a whopping $30, which feels a little bit more on par with what people were expecting based on all of the bugs and the issues that they have had. However, with that, console is still garbage. While the PC version has had innumerable bug fixes, patches, pages upon pages worth of various things, and now the game is in a much better and playable state on PC, it's still not at the level that people are looking for when it comes to next-gen consoles or even last-gen consoles and the status quo there. But what I wanted to mention was the fact that because the price has dropped and because on PC the game has had such drastic improvements, that right now there are a lot of positive reviews for the game. In fact, so much so that it is listed as very positive from recent reviews. So the fact that it came out around this time last year and the abysmal state that it was released in, the fact that they have done so much fixing that now, almost a year later, it is in a much better state. I think that maybe people who were interested in the game before might want to consider taking a look at the game for $30 because that seems like a more viable price. And even though the game has a lot more content to show that it is not what it was before and deserves to technically be a higher price, I know that a lot of people are not going to be comfortable with that fact, and I wanted to bring to light that, one, it is on sale, two, the story is incredibly good, and if you can deal with some of the issues that still plague the game, it is still infinitely better than it was before, especially on the PC. I can't speak for console, I'm sorry. But I think that now, if you were on the fence of whether or not you wanted to play the game, maybe consider giving it a shot because your investment in it is not going to be as much. But the reviews are really telling that it is a positive experience. And now, the quest director, Powell Sasko, I'm sure I butchered that because he is not English, tweeted about it and said the last few days of Cyberpunk 2077 received a flood of very positive reviews on Steam from new players. You can't imagine what this means to me. He later added that over 15,000 very positive reviews in the last days, while both Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher 3 are on the global list of Steam bestsellers, which is amazing as an achievement. And again, The Witcher had a very similar sort of situation where it launched in a very terrible state and then they brought it back, and now it is very much regarded as a really awesome game by the Witcher community, and therefore has sort of dug itself out of the trenches, and hopefully Cyberpunk can do the same thing if people are willing to give it a chance. And I feel like if people are going to give it a chance, $30 is a much more reasonable price for people to pay to see if it has done enough to entice them to stay with the game and support the game. CD Projekt Red has gone through hell and has probably gone through more hell than most other companies ever would. And while it's not that it wasn't deserved, there are other companies like Activision Blizzard who are getting shit on, and it doesn't look like things are really changing as much as we would like them to. And frankly, if you're going to dump a shit ton of negative criticism on anything, I would say do it on Activision Blizzard before you completely write CD Projekt Red off as one of the worst, because I just don't feel like the hatred was in alignment with everything. With all of that said, thank you so much for being part of Patreon and going through all of these gaming news videos with me. Remember, if you have suggestions or commentary on any of the topics that I've covered today, or maybe you want to talk about some of the cool games that you got for these Black Friday sales and whatnot, let me know in Discord. I would love to hear from you. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.